She stood by the window, fingers barely touching the glass. The invitation had been sitting on her kitchen counter for 3 days. Maya hadn't decided whether she would go. The morning light filtered through the curtains of her small apartment, casting gentle shadows across the hardwood floor. It was the kind of quiet Sunday that Maya had learned to appreciate. No demands, no voices except her own thoughts, and the distant hum of the city waking up below. She walked to the kitchen, her bare feet silent against the cool floor, and filled the kettle with water. While waiting for it to boil, her eyes drifted back to that cream-colored envelope. Class of 2005. Reunion. It read in elegant gold lettering. 20 years. 2 decades since she'd walked those halls. Full of dreams she could barely remember now. Maya made her tea slowly. Deliberately, everything in her life had become deliberate these days. Intentional. After the chaos of her marriage to Derek, after the storm that had nearly broken her, she'd rebuilt herself one careful choice at a time. The apartment was modest but hers. Every piece of furniture, every book on the shelf, every painting on the wall, she had chosen them. Not way, not compromise, just her truth. Finally given space to breathe, she carried her tea to the small dining table and sat down, pulling the invitation closer. Derek would be there. Of course he would. He'd been class president, star of the basketball team, the golden boy everyone had adored. And she had been Maya Chen, the quiet girl from the art club who somehow caught his attention senior year. Everyone had called them unlikely, but they'd called it love too. For a while it had been. Maya traced the edge of the invitation with her finger, remembering their wedding had been beautiful, a small garden ceremony that her mother had helped plan. Derek had promised her the world that day. He'd promised partnership, respect, growth, together. The first few years had been good. They were young, building careers, navigating adulthood side by side. Derek worked in his father's real estate firm, climbing quickly. Maya had taken a position at a small non-profit, working with underprivileged children through art programs. The pay was modest, but the work filled her soul. "When are you going to get a real job?" Derek had asked one evening 3 years into their marriage. He'd said it casually, not even looking up from his phone. Maya had frozen, paintbrush in hand. She'd been working on a piece for the children's art show. "This is a real job. You know what I mean?" He glanced at her then. That look she'd started recognizing more often, a mixture of impatience and dismissal. "Something that actually pays. My colleagues' wives are lawyers, doctors, executives. What am I supposed to say when they ask what you do?" Something small had cracked inside her that night. She'd told herself it was just stress. Derek was working long hours. He didn't mean it the way it sounded. But the cracks had kept forming. Maya shook herself from the memory and took a sip of tea. It had gone lukewarm while she'd been lost in the past. She stood, poured it out and made a fresh cup. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A text from her friend Jennifer, who was also invited to the reunion. "Please tell me you're coming. I can't face all those people alone. Besides, you look amazing. Let them see how far you've come." Maya smiled slightly. Jennifer didn't know the half of it. No one from their old life did. She typed back, still thinking about it. The truth was, Maya wasn't afraid of seeing old classmates. She wasn't even afraid of seeing Derek. Exactly. What unsettled her was the idea of reopening a chapter she'd worked so hard to close. She'd spent 5 years healing from that marriage, understanding what had gone wrong, and more importantly, understanding her own worth. Derek had never hit her. He'd never screamed or thrown things. The destruction had been quieter than that, a slow erosion of her confidence, her voice, her sense of self, comments about her weight, her career choices, her friends. Long silences when she tried to share her feelings. The way he'd started coming home later and later, his explanations growing thinner and less convincing. When she'd finally found the messages on his phone, conversations with a woman from his office, Derek hadn't even seemed particularly sorry. "You pushed me away," he'd said. "You were always in your own world with your art projects and your kids. I needed someone who actually wanted to be part of my life." She'd moved out 3 days later, taking only what fit in her car. Their divorce had been finalized within 6 months. Derek had kept the house, the furniture, their social circle. Maya had kept her dignity. The week passed in its usual rhythm. Maya spent her days at the community center where she now worked as program director, overseeing art therapy initiatives for children and adults, dealing with trauma. She'd built the program from almost nothing, securing grants, training volunteers, watching it grow into something that genuinely changed lives. On Wednesday evening, one of her students, a 9-year-old girl named Sophie, who'd been through foster care, presented her with a drawing. It showed 2 figures, a small girl and a taller woman. both holding paintbrushes, surrounded by bright colors. "That's you," Sophie said, pointing to the taller figure. "You taught me that sad feelings can turn into beautiful things." Maya had to excuse herself for a moment, stepping into the hallway to compose herself. These were the moments that reminded her why she'd chosen this path. Why Derek's definition of success had never fit her. By Thursday, she'd made her decision. She would go to the reunion, not to prove anything to Derek or anyone else, but because she'd earned the right to walk into any room with her head high. She was no longer the uncertain woman who'd left that marriage broken. She'd built something real from those broken pieces. She texted Jennifer, "I'm in, let's do this." Saturday evening arrived with surprising speed. Maya stood in front of her bedroom mirror, smoothing down her dress, a simple navy blue number that was elegant without trying too hard. She'd learned to dress for herself now, choosing things that made her feel comfortable and confident rather than performing for someone else's expectations. Jennifer picked her up at 6:30, talking excitedly about who might be there, what people were doing now, the gossip she'd heard through social media. Maya listened, letting her friends' enthusiasm wash over her, keeping her own nerves at bay. The reunion was being held at the Riverside Hotel, the same place where their senior prom had been. Walking through the lobby brought back a flood of memories, dancing with Derek under cheap decorations, feeling like the luckiest girl in the world because the popular boy had chosen her. She'd been so young. They both had been. The ballroom was already crowded when they arrived. Clusters of people standing around high-top tables, holding drinks, laughing at shared memories. Maya recognized faces immediately, even after 20 years. Time had changed them all: graying hair, reading glasses, laugh lines, but there was something familiar in every smile, every gesture. "Maya Chen." "Oh my God, Maya." She turned to find Ashley Brennan. Ashley Morrison now, according to her name tag, rushing toward her with open arms. They'd been lab partners in chemistry, bonding over their shared terrible grades in the subject. "Ashley, you look wonderful." They fell into easy conversation, catching up on careers and families. Ashley had 3 kids and worked as a nurse. She showed Maya pictures on her phone, beaming with pride. "What about you, any kids?" "No," Maya said simply. "But I work with children every day. I run an art therapy program." "That's so you," Ashley said warmly. "I remember your paintings. You were so talented." More people joined their circle. Maya found herself relaxing, genuinely enjoying the conversations. Most people seemed less concerned with impressing each other than she'd expected. They talked about aging parents, career changes, divorces, health scares, the real texture of adult life. She was laughing at someone's story about that teenager when she felt a shift in the energy of the room. She turned and saw Derek entering with a woman on his arm. He looked older, obviously, but he'd maintained the same confident posture, the same easy smile that had once made her heart race. The woman beside him was tall, blonde, immaculately dressed. Tiffany. Maya knew the name from mutual friends, though they'd never met. Derek's second wife, the one he'd married just a year after their divorce was finalized. Jennifer appeared at Maya's elbow, squeezing her hand. "You okay?" "I'm fine," Maya said. And she was surprised to realize she meant it. Looking at Derek didn't hurt the way she'd feared it might. She felt distant, like looking at a photograph of someone she'd known long ago. Derek was making his rounds, greeting people with handshakes and hugs, Tiffany smiling beside him. Maya turned back to her conversation, determinedly present with the people she was talking to, but she knew inevitably that their paths would cross. It happened about an hour later. Maya was at the bar getting water when she heard his voice behind her. "Maya." She turned. Derek stood there, Tiffany still at his side. And up close, Maya could see the changes time had carved. His face was slightly puffy, probably from too many business dinners. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes the way it used to. "Derek." "Hello. You look different." Maya wasn't sure if that was a compliment or not, so she simply smiled. "We all do. It's been 20 years. This is my wife, Tiffany." He gestured to the woman beside him. "Nice to meet you," Maya said, genuinely extending her hand. Tiffany shook it, her grip surprisingly firm. "Derek's told me about you. You two were high school sweethearts, right?" "We were," Maya confirmed. An awkward silence descended. Derek shifted his weight, and Maya recognized the gesture he used to do that when he was uncomfortable, when he wanted to say something but wasn't sure how. "So," he said finally, "what are you up to these days?" "Still doing the odd thing." There it was. That particular tone, that subtle dismissiveness she'd almost forgotten. "I'm a program director," Maya said calmly. "I run an art therapy initiative at the Riverside Community Center. We work with trauma survivors, children in foster care, Veterans with PTSD. We just secured a major grant to expand our services. Oh, that's nice. Derek nodded, but she could see he was already losing interest. Tiffany works in marketing for a tech startup. They just went public. Pretty exciting stuff. Tiffany looked slightly uncomfortable, but she smiled. It's been a wild ride. I'm happy for you both, Maya said. And she meant it. She genuinely wished them no ill will. Derek seemed to want more from the interaction. Though Maya couldn't tell what, he opened his mouth, closed it, then seemed to make a decision. You know, Maya, I have to say, I'm surprised you came tonight. I figured you'd want to avoid. He gestured vaguely. All this, given how things ended. Maya took a sip of her water, letting a moment pass before responding. Why would I avoid it? This is my reunion too. I have as much right to be here as anyone. Sure, sure. Of course. Derek glanced around as if looking for witnesses to the conversation. A few people were watching, trying to be subtle about it. I just meant, it must be hard, seeing everyone so successful, when you're still doing the same thing you were doing back when we were married. The words landed exactly as he'd intended them, designed to diminish to make her feel small. Jennifer appeared beside Maya, tension evident in her shoulders. Everything okay here? But Maya didn't need rescuing. She looked at Derek, really looked at him, and saw something she'd never noticed before. He was the one who was uncomfortable. He was the one who needed her to feel small so he could feel big. Derek, she said gently, I'm not doing the same thing I was doing during our marriage. During our marriage, I was trying to be someone I wasn't to make you happy. Now I'm doing work that actually matters to me. Work that changes lives. I'm sorry if that doesn't fit your definition of success. But it fits mine. Derek's face reddened slightly. I wasn't trying to. It's fine, Maya interrupted, keeping her voice kind. We wanted different things. We were different people. That's why we're not together anymore. And that's okay. She smiled at Tiffany. It was nice meeting you. I hope you both have a wonderful evening. She turned to walk away, Jennifer beside her, when Derek's voice rose behind her. Must be nice. Living in your little bubble. Pretending money doesn't matter. I'm sure all those grants and donations make you feel important. But at the end of the day, you're exactly where you were 10 years ago. Same apartment, same car, same life. Some of us actually moved forward. The room had gone quiet. Conversations stopped. People turned to watch. Maya felt Jennifer's hand on her arm, felt the anger radiating from her friend. But Maya herself felt strangely calm. She'd learned something in the years since Derek. Hurt people hurt people. His need to diminish her said everything about his own insecurity and nothing about her worth. She turned back slowly. Derek stood there, arms crossed, that challenging look on his face. She remembered from their worst arguments. Tiffany looked mortified, her hand on his arm as if trying to pull him back. Maya opened her mouth to respond, to defend herself or perhaps to simply walk away with grace. When movement at the entrance of the ballroom caught her eye, a man stood in the doorway, scanning the room. He was tall, dressed in a perfectly tailored dark suit, with an air of quiet authority. When his eyes found Maya, his entire face transformed with a warm smile. He crossed the ballroom with purpose and the crowd seemed to part naturally, people turning to watch his passage with curious expressions. I'm sorry I'm late, he said as he reached Maya, leaning down to kiss her cheek. His voice was gentle, meant just for her. The meeting ran over. Maya smiled up at him, feeling the genuine comfort of his presence. You're here now. That's what matters. He turned to acknowledge Derek and Tiffany, extending his hand. I don't believe we've met. I'm James. James Whitmore. Derek shook his hand automatically, a confused expression on his face. Derek Morrison. This is my wife Tiffany. Nice to meet you both. James's smile was polite but reserved. Jennifer was grinning beside Maya, barely containing her delight at the timing. Are you? Derek started, then trailed off, clearly trying to place the name. Recognition began to dawn slowly. Whitmore, as in Whitmore Technologies. That's right, James said mildly. Tiffany's eyes had gone wide. Oh my God, you're James Whitmore. Your company just partnered with our startup. I've seen you in meetings. James nodded politely. Small world. Derek looked between James and Maya, confusion giving way to something else. Disbelief perhaps, or calculation. How do you We're married, Maya said simply. The words hung in the air. Maya watched Derek process this information, his expression cycling through several emotions before settling on something that might have been embarrassment. I didn't know you'd remarried, he said finally. It was private, Maya explained. Just close friends and family. We prefer to keep our personal life quiet. Derek seemed to be recalibrating everything he thought he knew. Looking at Maya with new eyes, she could almost see him doing the math. Whitmore Technologies was valued in the billions. James was regularly featured in business magazines, known for both his professional success and his philanthropic work. But what Derek couldn't understand, what he was clearly struggling with, was how Maya, the woman he'd dismissed as unambitious, the woman he'd just publicly mocked for her modest life, could be married to someone like James. "How did you two meet?" Tiffany asked, seeming genuinely interested. James looked at Maya, his eyes warm. "At her community center, actually. My foundation was looking to support innovative approaches to trauma therapy. Maya's program was exactly what we were searching for. She presented her work to our board, and I was impressed. Doesn't quite cover it. The way she talked about her students, the outcomes she was achieving with minimal resources, I knew we were seeing something special." Maya felt herself blushing slightly. Even after 2 years of marriage, James's admiration still caught her off guard sometimes. "We started with a small grant," she added. "But James kept coming to visit the center, to see the work in progress. We'd have these long conversations about art and healing and what really makes a difference in people's lives. She changed my entire understanding of success," James said quietly. "I'd spent my whole life measuring value in profit margins and market share. Maya showed me there were other metrics that mattered more." Derek had gone very quiet. His earlier bravado completely deflated. "Jennifer never wanted to let an opportunity pass," spoke up. "So Derek, were you saying something about Maya's life not moving forward?" "I think," Tiffany said quickly, shooting her husband a look, "we should go say hello to some other people. It was nice meeting you both." She practically pulled Derek away. He went without protest. But Maya caught him glancing back once, his expression unreadable. When they were gone, Jennifer let out a laugh. "Oh my God, the timing. Did you see his face?" James looked concerned. "I'm sorry if I made things awkward. You texted that you might need backup, so I came as soon as I could." Maya reached for his hand, squeezing it. "Your timing was perfect. But you didn't need to come. I was handling it." "I know you were," James said with a smile. "I saw the last bit. You were amazing. I just wanted to be here to support you." This, Maya thought, was what partnership actually looked like. Not someone who needed her to be small so he could feel large, but someone who celebrated her strength and showed up when she needed him. The rest of the evening unfolded differently after that. People approached Maya with new curiosity, wanting to hear about her work, about how she and James had met. She answered their questions honestly, refusing to exaggerate or perform. This was her life, not perfect, not flashy, but authentic and meaningful. James fit seamlessly into the gathering, equally comfortable talking to teachers, engineers, stay-at-home parents, and small business owners. He had a gift for making people feel valued, for asking questions that showed genuine interest rather than polite obligation. Maya watched him talking animatedly with Ashley about the challenges in the healthcare system, and felt a wave of gratitude. After Derek, she genuinely believed she might never trust anyone enough to try again. She'd focused on healing herself, building her career, learning to be whole on her own. Meeting James hadn't been part of any plan. She remembered that first presentation to his foundation board, how nervous she'd been. She'd worn her only suit, practiced her speech 100 times, brought her best students' artwork to show the impact of the program. James had asked the most questions, pushing her to explain her methodology, her success metrics, her vision for expansion. She'd been intimidated at first, but then she'd realized he wasn't trying to poke holes in her work. He was genuinely trying to understand it. After the presentation, he'd approached her privately. "Your program is exactly what we're looking for," he'd said. "But I'd like to visit the center myself, see it in action. Would that be all right?" He'd come the following week, spending an entire afternoon watching her work with the children, asking thoughtful questions, even participating in an art project. She'd watched this billionaire tech CEO sitting on a tiny plastic chair, helping a 6-year-old boy who'd witnessed domestic violence paint his feelings onto canvas. And something in her chest had shifted. They'd started with professional meetings that somehow always ran long. Conversations about trauma theory and creative expression that turned into discussions about books, music, their childhoods, their dreams. James had been married before, to a brief early marriage that had ended amicably when they'd both realized they wanted different lives. "I thought I had to fit a certain mold," he told her once. "Successful tech CEO marries successful someone else. Build the perfect power couple image." But I was performing, not living. Maya had understood exactly what he meant. Their relationship had developed slowly, carefully. Both of them had been hurt before. Both were cautious about diving in too quickly. But the connection had been undeniable. Two people who'd both learned that success meant nothing if it came at the cost of yourself. James had proposed on an ordinary Tuesday evening in her apartment while they were cooking dinner together. No grand gesture, no audience, just him looking at her with absolute certainty, saying, "I want to build a life with you, not because it looks good or makes sense to anyone else, but because you make me want to be the best version of myself." She'd said yes before he'd even finished the question. Near the end of the reunion, Maya found herself in a quiet corner of the ballroom, taking a moment to herself. She watched her former classmates mingling, laughing, sharing photos of their lives. So many different paths, so many definitions of success and happiness. Derek was across the room, talking to a group of men who'd been on the basketball team with him. He looked relaxed now, back in his element. Tiffany stood nearby, scrolling through her phone. Maya felt no satisfaction in what had happened earlier, no sense of victory or vindication. She just felt peaceful, like a door had finally completely closed. "There you are." James appeared beside her, holding 2 glasses of champagne. "They're about to do a toast." "Thank you." She accepted the glass, leaning against him slightly. "How are you feeling?" he asked quietly. Maya considered the question. "Good, really good actually. I thought seeing Derek might hurt, or make me angry, or make me doubt myself. But mostly I just feel grateful. Grateful for everything that happened. If that marriage hadn't ended, if I hadn't gone through all that pain and healing, I wouldn't have been ready for you. I wouldn't have known what I actually needed in a partner." James kissed the top of her head. "I'm grateful too, for whatever journey brought you to that boardroom presentation." Someone clinked a glass, calling for attention. Jennifer had somehow ended up with the microphone, and she was grinning mischievously. "All right, everyone, I promise to keep this short. I just wanted to say, looking around this room, I'm struck by how far we've all come. 20 years ago, we thought we knew who we were, what we wanted, where we'd end up. And life had other plans for most of us. There was laughter and murmurs of agreement. Some of us went into careers we never expected. Some of us live in places we couldn't have imagined. Some of us are with our high school sweethearts. And some of us found love later in the most unexpected ways." She looked directly at Maya, her smile warm. "What I've learned," Jennifer continued, "is that success isn't about having the biggest house or the most impressive job title or the fullest bank account. It's about being true to yourself. It's about doing work that matters to you. It's about building relationships based on mutual respect and genuine care. It's about having the courage to walk away from things that diminish you and toward things that help you grow." She raised her glass. "So here's to all of us. To the journey. To the lessons. To becoming who we were meant to be. To the next 20 years. To the next 20 years." Everyone echoed, raising their glasses. Maya drank, feeling the bubbles on her tongue, James's hand warm in hers. As people began to disperse, heading toward the exits or clustering in smaller groups, Maya saw Derek approaching. She felt James tense slightly beside her, protective instinct kicking in. But she squeezed his hand reassuringly. Derek stopped a few feet away, hands in his pockets, looking uncertain in a way she'd rarely seen him. "Maya, could I talk to you for a minute alone?" James looked at her, letting her decide. She nodded. "It's okay. I'll meet you by the door in a few minutes." He hesitated, then nodded and walked away, though she could tell he wouldn't go far. "What is it, Derek?" He looked down, then back up at her. "I wanted to apologize for earlier. I was out of line." Maya waited, not rushing to fill the silence. "I guess seeing you here, looking so confident and happy, it brought up a lot of old stuff. I realized I'd been telling myself a story about our marriage, about why it ended, and maybe that story wasn't entirely fair to you." "Maybe," Maya said gently, without malice. Derek had the grace to look ashamed. "I blamed you for a lot of things that weren't your fault. I needed you to be the problem so I didn't have to look at my own issues. And tonight, trying to make you feel small, that was really about me feeling small. Seeing you with someone like James, seeing how happy you are, it made me confront some uncomfortable truths." Maya took a breath. "Derek, I forgave you a long time ago. Not because you asked for it, or deserved it, but because holding on to anger was hurting me more than it was hurting you. You and I wanted different things, valued different things. That doesn't make either of us wrong. It just makes us incompatible." "You seem like you've really figured things out," he said quietly. "I had to. When our marriage ended, I had to completely rebuild my sense of self. I had to figure out who I was when I wasn't trying to be who you needed me to be. It was painful, but it was necessary." Derek nodded slowly. For what it's worth, the work you're doing, it sounds really meaningful. I was dismissive of it before during our marriage and tonight, but that says more about me than about you. Thank you for saying that. They stood in awkward silence for a moment. I should go, Derek said finally. Tiffany's waiting. But Maya, I really am sorry. And I'm glad you found happiness. I'm glad you did too, Maya said. And she meant it. Take care of yourself, Derek. He nodded and walked away. Maya watched him rejoin Tiffany, saw them leave together, and felt the final thread of connection to that old life gently dissolve. James appeared at her side moments later. Everything okay? Everything's perfect, Maya said, lacing her fingers through his. Let's go home. Later that night, back in their apartment significantly larger than her old one, but decorated with the same care and intention, Maya stood on the balcony, looking out at the city lights. James joined her, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. What are you thinking about? He asked. About how differently tonight could have gone, she said. If I hadn't done the work to heal after my divorce. If I'd let Derek's words get to me. If I'd measured my worth by his standards instead of my own. You would have been fine either way, James said. You didn't need me to show up to prove your value. I know, Maya said. But it was nice having you there anyway. They stood in comfortable silence, the city breathing below them. Can I tell you something? Mia said after a while. When Derek was trying to embarrass me tonight, there was a moment when I felt that old feeling that maybe he was right. Maybe I should have done more, achieved more, become more. It was just a flash, just a second, but it was there. That's understandable, James said. Those old wounds don't just disappear. But then I looked around that room, Maya continued, and I saw all these people who were defining success in their own ways. Ashley with her nursing career and her kids. Jennifer who left corporate law to become a teacher. Marcus who opened a bookstore even though everyone told him it would fail. And I realized we're all just doing our best to build lives that feel authentic to us. She turned to face James. Derek needed me to fail so he could feel successful. But the beautiful thing is my success or failure has nothing to do with him. I get to decide what matters. I get to define what a good life looks like. And what does it look like? James asked, though his smile suggested he already knew the answer. Maya gestured around her at the balcony, the apartment, the city, but also at something larger. This work that fills my soul. People I love who actually see me. The freedom to make choices that align with my values. Peace, joy, growth. That's my version of success. Sounds pretty perfect to me, James said, pulling her closer. As they stood there, wrapped in the blanket and each other, Maya thought about the young girl who'd fallen for Derek all those years ago. She'd believed that being loved by the popular boy meant she had value. She'd spent years trying to mold herself into someone worthy of that love. Now she understood. She'd always been worthy. She'd always been enough. She just needed to find someone who could see it. And more importantly, she needed to see it in herself. Derek's attempt to humiliate her at the reunion had failed not because James had shown up, though his presence had certainly undercut the effort. It had failed because Maya no longer needed external validation to know her worth. She'd built her self-esteem on something more solid than anyone else's opinion on her own values. Her own achievements, her own growth. The real victory wasn't that her current husband was wealthier than her ex. It was that she'd learned to value herself exactly as she was. Moral of the story: true success cannot be measured by someone else's ruler. When we spend our lives trying to meet others' definitions of achievement, we lose ourselves in the pursuit. The greatest victory is not in proving our worth to those who doubted us, but in knowing our worth regardless of their opinion. Healing from past pain requires us to rebuild our self-esteem on our own foundation, not on wealth, status, or anyone else's validation. When we do this work, when we learn to honor our own values and celebrate our own authentic path, other people's attempts to diminish us lose their power. Forgiveness is not about excusing harmful behavior. It's about freeing ourselves from the weight of resentment. We can acknowledge the pain someone caused while releasing our attachment to that pain. And finally, the right partnership doesn't require us to be smaller so someone else can be bigger. The right partnership celebrates who we are, supports our growth, and shows up when we need them, not to rescue us but to stand beside us as we rescue ourselves. The most profound success is peace with who we are, what we've chosen, and where we're going. Everything else is just noise.